welcome to my channel on the best of fantasy. Let's talk One Piece, specifically the Impel Down arc of the Summit War Saga. As beautifully as any story ever told, One Piece shows us the importance of pursuing one's dreams, which are at the core of one's self. And having gained that self-assertion through the pursuit of dreams, one often possesses clarity in terms of identity. I am my dream. That's as simply as you can put it. I am my dream. Or I'm on my way to becoming it. Such self-possession can also encourage strong friendships in the midst of the pursuit of the dreams. Friends help each other to follow their bliss, to find themselves. They are loyal and accepting. Sometimes they make sacrifices for each other. Sacrifices that make possible a friend's pursuit of their dream. And there is deep beauty in such sacrifices. All of this we see embodied in One Piece. And in Impel Down, there is one character especially who displays it in such poignant ways. A character whose declaration of identity begins and ends with "Oh, come my way," or "Okama way." A character whose sacrifice is, in my mind, the key scene of Impel Down, giving us yet another iconic One Piece moment. It's also worth noting that Impel Down pays obvious homage to Dante's Divine Comedy, most especially Dante's Inferno. And this is pretty obvious with the jailers resembling devils and its various descending levels of the imprisoning the damned, and with the lowest level reserved for the most damned of all. But Impel Down is, I think, importantly, also a subversion. In Dante's Inferno, in his vision, the suffering of the damned is justified. They have earned their torment. God's divine justice is inevitable. Here in Impel Down, the world government has set itself up as God, with authority that must not be questioned, and an assertion of power that cannot be denied. But we see the injustice at the core of this very assertion, with prisoners like Ace being used as political pawns and a resistance movement led by those who refuse to bow to conventional views and categories. Oda uses Impel Down to show us the defiance of individuals who do not conform, who in loyalty and friendship help one another to assert who they are against a world with powers that seek to contain and categorize them. The arc actually begins with Ace and Garp, grandson and grandfather. And there are some tantalizing scraps there about their family, with Ace's really appreciating neither his rebel father nor his Navy grandfather, and Whitebeard assuming the role of Ace's true father figure. There are also some early assertions by Alvida that Buggy's luck has run out, and this actually turns out to be wildly inaccurate. As we see later, Buggy's dumb luck and sometimes just his opportunism repeatedly get him out of situations, even as he comically tries to ditch Luffy again and again. Buggy finds himself the recipient of so much luck that by the end, he's making a grab for power. Impel Down is also a great example of the extreme and imaginative world building that Oda does in One Piece. With Boa Hancock's help, Luffy gets inside this crazy prison fortress, and this is where we meet the devilish jailers of Impel Down, such as Hannibal. I'm sorry, I'm not looking at pronunciations to avoid spoilers, so do correct me, though, if I'm saying Hannibal incorrectly. But he is the second in command, who resembles a cross between a devil and an Egyptian pharaoh, I guess, with that considerable chin of his. He has some troubles concealing his ambitions to become the warden of Impel Down, but he does demonstrate at a certain point in the story actual devotion to justice. Like, he seems to be genuinely concerned for the people that he believes, at least, that he is protecting, by keeping the prisoners of Impel Down incarcerated. I found it pretty amusing that on the occasion that Luffy gets Boa Hancock's name correctly, it's not something that he doesn't often do with anyone. He has a tendency really not to care too much about the details of names and that sort of thing. But the moment he gets it right, she takes this as a sign of true love. Poor Boa Hancock is quite smitten with Luffy at this point, which, he would have been in big trouble without her, actually. She plays a crucial role in getting him inside Impel Down to help save Ace. And so he's in, but quickly he gets into trouble along with Buggy. He runs up into Buggy, fleeing the Blue Gory, and we get One Piece chaos right off the bat. And this is another great example of enemies to allies. This is something that happens a lot. Foe to not quite friend in this case, because Buggy is treacherous. So he's not a true friend at all. And of course, Mr. 3 as well falls in. And I would say that Mr. 3, unlike Buggy, actually shows some moments of courage. We'll talk about that later. But neither one is a terribly trustworthy or reliable ally, I would say. Buggy shows his instinct for self-preservation and self-aggrandizing many a time, including his desire to get to Captain John's loot. And so he is a contrast to Luffy, who is so trusting and so giving, really, in his friendship. But they descend, nevertheless, together through the levels of Impel Down. Eventually, we do meet Magellan, the poison-oozing warden of Impel Down and frequent victim of diarrhea. Jeez. Only in One Piece. Only in One Piece. But despite his extended visits to the throne, his devil fruit powers are not to be jested with or trifled with. He is a formidable opponent. In his company, Boa Hancock uses her powers, her devil fruit powers of persuasion, to get the message to Ace that Luffy is trying to rescue his brother. I love that moment where she gives it not exactly secretly coded, but Ace understands the message. And we also meet there, jailed alongside Ace, is Jimbei. And again, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing. I'm not looking up pronunciations. But Jimbei, I really enjoyed meeting him. One of the 7 warlords, but imprisoned for his refusal to go along with what is, from his eyes, an unjust war. He also, interestingly, is a whale shark fishman. And I think that is a pretty crucial aspect of his identity as well. Something that allows him to perhaps see the injustice of this war in a way and care about it in a way so that other warlords might not. But I loved meeting him, and I think his stance is one that is noble and good. He seems to be a genuine, in contrast to an earlier leader like Arlong, who really feels the wrongs of the prejudice and the oppression of the fishmen. Here you have a figure who has chosen to respond to that differently in Jimbei. So fascinating figure. We'll talk about him some more as well. But he's one of the few among the warlords and the government forces who genuinely seeks to do what's right. I mean, I suspect the motives of most of the people in positions of power here. But Jimbei, it seems to me, is trying to do what's right. And we learn more through him, a little bit more about the status of the fishmen in the One Piece world. Something that I think is probably going to be important going forward as well. But I enjoyed meeting this noble character who has responded in this manner to the persecution and to the current situation, where he sees the injustice of it. And he feels loyalty to people who have done good in the world, apparently like Whitebeard, who has brought peace and justice, at least in some ways, to the fishmen. There are various hijinks in the midst of all this of Luffy and Buggy and Mr. 3 as they meet various foes. I'm not going to get into great detail or I'd be here forever. But a lot of these foes, I thought, interestingly, this is Oda, this is One Piece. A lot of them are pulled right out of mythology, particularly leaning on Greek myth, as Dante did, and many authors from Western literature have done. But lots of interesting manticores and a sphinx and whatnot. So lots of that going on. But there really is so much at stake for Impel Down. in this situation because it's supposed to be impregnable. It's supposed to be inescapable. It is a sign of the world government's power and prowess. And for there to be any weakness, uh, which would be shown by a prison break, would be inexcusable. So a successful breakout would reveal that the world government is not as all powerful as it claims to be, especially as in a crucial time like this, where it's about to go to war. Projecting power is crucial when you're about to go to war. So this would be really bad timing for a prison break. Of course, Luffy doesn't care now, does he? And so the various powers of Impel Down gather, and such as the sadistic and I think aptly named Sadie, who is the security chief, seems to enjoy inflicting pain. And there also are some new allies that appear as well from the prisoner ranks, such as Bon Clay, you guessed it. So he's my MVP for Impel Down. No competition. I just loved Bon Clay's arrival here. I so much enjoy his joy. I enjoy his spirit. I enjoy Bon Clay's just beautiful assertions of who he is and his loyalty and his friendship, which we will get into here. But amidst all these dangers and allies and everything else, there is nothing more dangerous than Magellan, whose Hydra, again, another Greek mythology reference here, the many-headed monstrous expulsion of poison, is one of the most potent and scary things we've yet to see in One Piece. I loved Bon Clay's reunion with Luffy. I just found that to be so beautiful, and I love the friendship that they share. And there is mention, Luffy mentions his previous sacrifice, and also Bon's assertion that we swans never die. This proves to be, I think, some foreshadowing of what's to come here in Impel Down. But Bon proves essential in combating more of these mythological foes that come along, like the Minotaur. There's another one. And turning Luffy toward Iva. Again, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Ivanka, Iva, the queen of the pink paradise of Kamabaka Queendom. That's what I'm talking about. Yes, the mysterious miracle worker. And Bon's idol. And so here we're introduced to this Kamabaka Queendom, or Okama. It seems to be echoed in this very much. This also, by the way, I think is where Sanji ends up after Kuma has spread the members of the Straw Hat crew to various places. It appears that Sanji has ended up in the Kamabaka Queendom. And I think it's an interesting one, an interesting choice on Oda's part, given Sanji's chivalry and his very traditional notions about women. I think it'll be interesting to see what effects this stay has on Sanji, who it appears, at least from the cover story, that where we see him, that he felt a bit challenged there, and later appears, though, to have embraced the saying that when in Rome, or in Kamabaka, do as the Kamabakans do. So I'll be interested to see not only what happens with Sanji, but with the other members of Straw Hats that we get glimpses of in the cover stories. But there are just loads of shenanigans here. I'm talking about back with Luffy and the others in Impel Down, with appearances by former members of the Baroque Works. So here we are revisiting the Crocodile and company. But we move toward this inevitable first encounter. This is a One Piece thing where you have this first encounter between Luffy and the big baddie, or the adversary, the antagonist of the arc. In this case, of course, it's Magellan with his venom fruit powers, and you get this immediate categorization by Magellan as the representative of the world government, as the warden of this jail. He immediately categorizes Luffy as a criminal, which means that he has put Luffy inside his notions of justice. He has fit Luffy into his notion of justice, which he is dedicated to justice in the way that he thinks of it, but he seems incapable of seeing outside that box. So in the midst of this, though, Bon Clay, he has his Usopp moment when Luffy and Magellan have their first big encounter. Bon Clay does the sensible thing and runs away, and he does beat himself up over it for sure. Never mind that it is probably the most logical thing he could have done in that situation, that he would not have helped if he had tried to fight alongside Luffy against Magellan. He still feels incredible guilt over that. And I think it's an important scene because it does establish his later act as one of even greater significance. Because he failed initially, I think his later act feels even more compelling. And we'll get to that later act. Of course, you probably all know what I'm talking about. But this, betrayal from his own perspective sets up the most beautiful moment, in my opinion, in the entire arc near the end. But Luffy endures terrible pain. And really, he is sacrificing everything in order to achieve this goal of freeing his brother, of freeing Ace. But it's not enough against Magellan. We've seen Luffy, unfortunately for him, his zest and his energy and his power it has carried him far in One Piece. But we've seen him now run up against some really serious adversaries who are just too much in the moment. And Magellan indeed sends Luffy to hell. So there's a message here of yes, you do need to depend on your friends. You also need to sometimes be smart about how you oppose your antagonist. But in the end, with his devil fruit powers and the devoted loyalty of his friendship, Bon Clay outsmarts the jailers and determines to save Luffy, ultimately realizing the only hope is the miracle worker. This is the person that he has long sought, it happens, and a person that I will refer to as Iva. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. But we have to go through frozen hell, yet another layer here, and various obstacles where Bon Clay perseveres in the name of friendship, aided by Luffy's will not to die until he saves Ace. And sometimes miracles can happen when friends stay true to each other. Bon and Luffy save each other, with Luffy showing his haki once again against the wolves in frozen hell just before the arrival of Inazuma. And Inazuma being, of course, Iva or Emporio Ivankov's second in command, whose status, that is Inazuma's status as a member of the new Kama, is signaled by his pied attire, is the different colors, and also his ability to take both male and female forms. But Bon Clay wakes up in New Kama, a hidden oasis of freedom. Big One Piece theme here, people, is freedom. This is also freedom, it's important to note, in the midst of hell, in the middle of Impel Down. These people have shown the will and the courage to form a place, to make a place of refuge, a place of freedom. And this is also a place that awaits the spark that is Luffy, to flare into full-blown rebellion against all the oppression that Impel Down represents. And it is here that we meet the wonderfully flamboyant Queen Emporio Ivankov. I really enjoyed meeting Iva here. This is just One Piece to me. This is the essence of One Piece. It is simultaneously celebratory and subversive. And One Piece just does that so well. With Iva's miraculous hormonal devil fruit power and also Bon Clay's beautiful display of friendship and loyalty. Not to mention most of the food in New Kama, Luffy is saved by his friends. By their loyalty, he is saved and he is healed. I also think it's really important to keep in mind something that Iva says that I just love this. Maybe one of my favorite panels. I think my favorite panel is still Robin's moment of "I want to live," but this one's going to come close for me when Iva says, "Miracles only happen to those who never give up." This one really resonated with me. One of my favorite things to teach, I think I may have mentioned before, I'm an English professor, but I am a medievalist. And one of my favorite things to teach is Beowulf, where the eponymous title character here says something in Old English to the effect, well, I'll say it in Old English, why not? Oft wir nereth onfein von his ellen deach. You probably didn't expect to hear Old English in this video, but you never know around here. But that means something to the effect that often fate spares an undoomed man when his courage holds. So, yes, miracles only happen to those who never give up. Keep trying, keep fighting, don't give up, and you never know what can happen. I love the sentiment. It is just so One Piece to me, and I love the way the context in which it's said as well. I also think that the miracle of Luffy's recovery is beautifully complemented by his concern for Bon once he's better. And he bows to his friend, realizing the debt that he owes to Bon. Just love it when Luffy bows. These are some of the greatest Luffy moments I'm noticing. And these are moments where you see how much Luffy is learning as well. But what a beautiful thing, that respect. And of course, I understand that bowing is, especially within the context of Japanese culture, a very meaningful act. So this was just a beautiful part of the story for me. So you get to see these rebels against the system being the world government and its military industrial complex. I think that there are some interesting contrasts here, though. Within the world government, within the forces that represent the authorities and oppression and so forth, you have different types. You have Magellan, who really does, I think, from his perspective at least, he believes in justice. He believes he's doing the right thing. He believes that he is serving the world by keeping the bad sort out of the way of everyone else. He at least believes that what he's doing is right, even if he is very tunnel visioned about it. But you have characters like Shiryu, who this guy is essentially doesn't believe in anything except maybe himself. He believes in pain. He believes in inflicting pain. This is a person who, within the world government, has wormed his way into a position of authority and has fully abused it. This is the type that really disgusts me personally the most. The ones who are ambitious, they seek power not to help anyone, but simply because they enjoy having power over others and abusing them, using that power. So yeah, this is bloodlust in a uniform. That's what Shiryu is. The system, unfortunately, I think there are some questions we have to ask when we come across these so-called bad apples. Are they just bad apples, or is it that the system excuses and even encourages not just control, but abuse and oppression? I think it's a question that really ought to be explored here. Is Shiryu the random bad apple, or is he a product of the system? An inevitable byproduct of wielding absolute power in the name of justice, right? And it is a truth, unfortunately, that ambitious, abusive people seek positions of power so they can act out on their sadism. With this kind of emphasis on control and conformity, there are just many people like Iva who choose to rebel, and God bless them, Also, I think it's significant that Iva knows Dragon, Luffy's father, who is this revolutionary figure that I still don't know very much about, but a revolutionary nonetheless. And I think it's interesting that we see a glimpse of how such rebels pay a personal price for defying the powers that be. We see Dragon, we saw early on how Ace expressed a kind of resentment of his father for not being around. But we see a sign here, at least, that this is not something that Dragon really wanted necessarily or chose, except that his dedication to this revolution overrode his ties to his family, apparently. But he, not without regret, we see that Iva perceives that in him. Whatever the case, knowing Luffy's father, Iva is ready to help, and this is where things really get going. With Ace taken to Marineford from Impel Down, we get an all-out breakout from this citadel, this fortress of oppression, and new alliances form. You have Jinbei. Really enjoyed meeting this character, and I think it's very significant that when we see him, he pleads to be free for mercy's sake. That is something that is very telling about his character. Jinbei, he doesn't blather on about justice. He speaks of mercy, in contrast to most people in positions of power. This, to me, says more than anything that this is a good man, or a good fishman, as it were. Of all people as well, we get to speak not a good person here. we see Crocodile again. But again, in One Piece fashion, you have another form of former foes to allies here, at least in the moment of necessity. But Iva, I think, significantly knows something about Crocodile, and that is one thing perhaps that is keeping him in line. That Iva has this knowledge. We don't know what it, or I don't know what it is yet, but there is something there that helps to keep Crocodile as an ally in this moment. But there are just some beautiful sacrifices in the process of this breakout, this quest to for freedom. This quest for freedom. It is all about freedom. I mean, it's just a beautiful metaphor for the quest for freedom. You have all these people trying to break out of Impel Down, but you also have Luffy going after his brother to free him as well. But yeah, some beautiful sacrifices here, such as Iva and Inazuma allowing the others to escape while they delay Magellan and pay a price. You also have many ordinary people who participate, knowing that they're not even going to make it, but they're making it possible for someone else to make it. Just even that symbolic freedom for them is enough to participate in this act. And you even have moments where there are some cowards like Mr. 3 who display a bit of courage. I like that, actually, because his wax wall and his wax appendages actually come in pretty handy for helping Luffy to fight against Magellan. So you never know, that someone you can dismiss as useless sometimes can prove useful in the right circumstances. And that happens with Mr. 3. So I definitely appreciated that moment as well. But it all results in this running battle where you have the rebels versus the power of the government. It is vast. You have these huge displays of power. It's One Piece. So yes, Luffy has to stretch further to save his brother, just as he's done previously for the Straw Hats. And into this chaos arrives Blackbeard, because we didn't have enough elements going into this craziness. So here comes Blackbeard, who, while underestimating Magellan, at least, he does form an alliance with this traitor, Shiryu, which I find interesting, that these characters find common cause within each other. Luffy also has to put aside his anger with help from Jinbei and Jinbei's wisdom in order to get to Ace. It seems like Blackbeard he's playing his own game here. And he's not fulfilling his duties as a warlord, the newest of the warlords. He is up to something big, it seems. There's some big ambition there that he has. And in a way, I find that he is, in his dreams, a kind of selfish version of Luffy. He believes, as well as Luffy, in going after the impossible, but also in following his dreams, Blackbeard does so at the expense of others. Whereas Luffy pursues his dreams by being free, Blackbeard does so by harming others. And this essentially is the difference. I think a commenter in one of my previous videos described them as being like two sides of one coin. They both are all about the pursuit of dreams, but the manner in which they do it is so drastically polar opposite, actually. So with that emphasis on freedom versus oppression. Jinbei really proves his worth and his power through his role in procuring a ship for all the escapees from Impel Down. While Crocodile and Mr. 1 also, show some great prowess, and Buggy, Buggy shows considerable opportunism, while Luffy takes on Magellan with some help, again, from Mr. 3's wax. So Magellan's Judgment of Hell, very aptly named, I think. This move of his Judgment of Hell, it really conveys everything that is authoritative and destructive about wielding indiscriminate power. Never mind all the collateral damage, and really it's just that the power itself justifies the judgment. I have the power, therefore what I do is just and right. It's that kind of assertion in this moment. And yeah, judgment from hell. However, through Luffy's giant foot, his Gear 3 move, Mr. Three's wax, and the power of Iva's wink, which I love. Oh yes, and I can't forget Jinbei's whale shark friends as well. Not to mention just the refusal to give up. Luffy and his friends produce a miracle. Miracles can happen when you don't give up, and they escape from Impel Down. Yet, it is important to note there have been many sacrifices along the way, and the greatest is yet to come. The gates of justice are closed. I think that just, again, is such a powerful metaphor here. The gates of justice are closed. Oh, wow. I mean, it is a real predicament within the context of the story, but it is also a powerful metaphor, since those without power often find justice to be a dead end for them. But a final miracle happens, and it's through sacrifice. The gates of justice open on the orders of Magellan, or at least Bon Clay in Magellan's form. Bon returned to hell. He returned to hell to save his friends. I just find that so beautiful. Mastering his fear, the fear that had made him run earlier, he turns right around and he goes to his doom, knowing it's his doom for the sake of his friends, to give Luffy a chance to save Ace. This is loyalty. This is friendship. This is courage in the face of certain doom. For, as Bon says himself, the flower of friendship can bloom even in hell. Now the petals of that flower will be scattered upon the rolling bosom of the sea. One day I will make that flower bloom again. Oh, come my way. The importance in One Piece of flower petals and cherry blossoms, and these are symbols of fleeting beauty. They're fragile, and yet in their beauty they are powerful and wondrous. This is life's defiance of the void. This is the light that we shine in the darkness, in companionship and friendship. We end this arc with Luffy's determination to save his brother, leading him and those with him into the midst of a looming war, something on a scale that is both ominous and previously unseen in One Piece. And against such vast powers, Luffy brings his relentless pursuit of his dream of a life of freedom for himself and those he loves. But he also brings his friendship. And this arc so beautifully portrays to us what the loyalty of friendship can achieve. That is it from me for now. Until next time.